My name is John, and this is a long story that will shock you. The old man stumbled through the grocery store, his weathered olive coat hanging loosely over his thin frame. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows on his wrinkled face as he slowly examined a can of beans, his trembling hands betraying his age. For 3 years, locals had grown accustomed to seeing him shuffling through the neighborhood, mumbling to himself, collecting discarded items that most would consider trash. "Hey, you there!" The sharp voice cut through the quiet store. Captain James Sullivan stood at the end of the aisle, his police uniform crisp and immaculate, badge gleaming under the lights. 2 officers flanked him, hands hovering near their belts. "Don't move." The old man froze, confusion clouding his tired eyes as the captain approached with deliberate steps. "Robert Wilson, is it?" Captain Sullivan smirked, glancing at the small notepad in his hand. "We've had reports of items going missing in this area. Empty your pockets, old man." "I haven't taken anything," Robert whispered, his voice barely audible. The captain grabbed Robert's arm roughly, spinning him around as customers watched in shock. 3 shoplifting incidents this week alone, and witnesses describe someone matching your distinctive appearance. His lip curled with disgust as he handcuffed the frail man. "This neighborhood is being cleaned up, starting now." "Please," Robert pleaded quietly. "I have identification." "Save it for the station," Sullivan interrupted, dragging him toward the exit. "I'm sure your park bench won't miss you tonight." As Robert was pushed into the police car, something fell from his coat, a small, worn leather notebook. The captain kicked it aside without a second glance. What no one noticed was the faint insignia embossed on its cover, nearly worn away with age. By morning, everything would change. Those who bothered to notice Robert Wilson saw only what they expected to see: an aging man who had fallen through society's cracks. His fingernails were perpetually dirty, his olive green coat frayed at the edges, and his uneven gait suggested years of hardship. What they failed to see was the purpose behind every careful movement and seemingly random pause. Robert Edward Wilson had spent 42 years in federal service, the last decade as one of the FBI's most effective undercover operatives specializing in internal corruption investigations. His unremarkable appearance had always been his greatest asset, the ability to blend into backgrounds, to become part of the scenery that powerful people spoke freely around. "You can't fight corruption from a corner office," he once told a rookie agent who asked why he chose such difficult assignments. "You fight it from the shadows where it hides." 3 years ago, when reports of police corruption in this district reached concerning levels, Robert volunteered for what might be his final assignment. At 65, when most agents were settling into administrative positions or retirement, he moved into a small room at the edge of the district and began his transformation into the neighborhood fixture everyone would eventually ignore. Each morning, he would walk the same routes, stopping at the same benches, creating the predictable patterns that eventually rendered him invisible. Children would sometimes ask their parents about the old man with the notebook, but adults rarely gave him a second glance. That invisibility gave him unprecedented access to witness the small exchanges: cash slipped between palms, evidence disappearing from crime scenes, suspects released without processing. Robert's extraordinary memory had been honed through decades of fieldwork. His seemingly nonsensical mumblings were actually carefully coded observations: badge numbers, locations, times of suspicious activities. The trash he collected often contained discarded evidence that officers thought would never be seen again. What made Robert truly remarkable wasn't just his dedication, but his unwavering belief in justice. Before joining the FBI, he had founded the Wilson Foundation for Children of Fallen Officers, anonymously supporting over 200 families who had lost parents in the line of duty. After his wife Sarah passed away 15 years ago, he poured himself into this work, becoming a guardian angel to those who would never know his name. In one particular case, he personally ensured that Maya Reynolds, the daughter of an officer killed during a drug bust, received a full scholarship to medical school. Today, she was a leading trauma surgeon, unaware that the mysterious benefactor who changed her life was now sitting in a holding cell, being treated like a common criminal. The fluorescent lights of the grocery store had witnessed countless interactions. between Robert and the officers who never truly saw him. Last month, Officer Davis had shoved him aside while responding to a call, muttering, "Get out of the way, old-timer," without realizing Robert had just witnessed him accept an envelope from a known drug dealer around the corner. For Captain James Sullivan, Robert was merely another nuisance to be cleared from the streets in his aggressive campaign to restore order to the district. Sullivan had recently been promoted after a series of high-profile arrests, though rumors circulated about evidence that conveniently appeared during his investigations. "Get that homeless trash away from my crime scene," Sullivan had ordered. Last week, when Robert happened to be sitting on a bench near a convenience store robbery. What the captain didn't notice was how Robert's keen eyes catalogued the inconsistencies in the officers' reports, how evidence bags disappeared into Sullivan's vehicle rather than the forensics van. There were those, however, who sensed something different about the old man. Maria Gonzalez, who ran the corner cafe, noticed how his hands, despite their apparent shakiness, moved with surprising precision when he thought no one was watching. She had caught him once, his weathered fingers nimbly reconstructing a torn document from the precinct's dumpster. "Would you like some hot coffee, sir?" she had asked, startling him. "Just warming these old bones," he'd mumbled, quickly resuming his confused demeanor. But Maria had seen the momentary clarity in his eyes, a sharpness that disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. Officer Sarah Jenkins, a rookie still learning the unwritten rules of the precinct, had developed an unusual habit of checking on the old man during cold nights. Something about his dignity resonated with her. Once, when she offered him a blanket, their eyes met briefly, and she felt an unexpected sense that he was assessing her. "Be careful who you trust, young officer," he had whispered, before loudly rambling about invisible birds to mask his moment of lucidity. The small notebook that had fallen from Robert's pocket contained what appeared to be nonsensical scribbles to untrained eyes. But those pages held 3 years of meticulous documentation, dates, times, badge numbers, and transactions, all encoded in a system Robert had developed decades ago during Cold War operations. As he sat in the holding cell at the precinct, Robert closed his eyes, mentally reviewing the names on the FBI extraction team that would be activated by his missed check-in. For the first time in 3 years, he allowed himself to feel a tinge of satisfaction. Captain Sullivan's very public arrest of the homeless old man had unwittingly accelerated the timeline of an operation that was finally ready to conclude. The wheels of justice were already in motion, though none of the officers processing Robert's paperwork realized that their actions were being monitored from the highest levels of federal law enforcement. "Time for your one phone call, old-timer," an officer announced, unlocking the cell. "Tas? Though I doubt anyone's waiting by the phone for you." Robert shuffled forward, head down, concealing the slight smile that crossed his weathered face. The precinct hummed with routine activity the following morning. Officers filed reports while Captain Sullivan held court in his office, regaling junior officers with the story of yesterday's arrest. "One less vagrant cluttering our streets," Sullivan chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "This neighborhood cleanup is going to look excellent in my next performance review." The front doors swung open with deliberate force. 3 men and a woman in immaculate suits entered, their presence immediately commanding attention. The woman stepped forward, her badge flashing under the fluorescent lights. "Special Agent Diana Mercer, FBI," she announced, her voice cutting through the sudden silence. "We're here for Robert Wilson." Captain Sullivan emerged from his office, straightening his uniform. "The homeless guy? What's the FBI want with—" "Where is he?" Mercer interrupted, her tone leaving no room for questions. Sullivan gestured toward the holding cells. "Back there, but I don't understand why federal agents are interested in a local shoplifter." One of the agents disappeared down the hallway while Mercer fixed her gaze on Sullivan. "Captain, are you familiar with Operation Lighthouse?" Before Sullivan could answer, the side door opened. The disheveled old man from yesterday walked out, but something had changed. Though his clothes remained the same, Robert Wilson now carried himself differently, his back straight, eyes clear and focused, each step purposeful and precise. "Agent Wilson," Mercer nodded respectfully. "Are you all right, sir?" "I'm fine, Diana," Robert replied, his voice no longer frail but commanding, "though I've had more comfortable accommodations during operations." The transformation stunned everyone in the room. Officers froze at their desks, paperwork forgotten as they witnessed the homeless man they dismissed for years speak with the authority of a senior federal agent. "What the hell is this?" Sullivan demanded, his face flushing. Robert turned to him, studying. The captain with eyes that now revealed decades of intelligence work. "Special Agent Robert Wilson, FBI Counterintelligence and Internal Corruption Task Force. For the past 3 years, I've been gathering evidence on law enforcement corruption in this district." He nodded to one of the agents, who placed a sealed file on the nearest desk. That file contains documentation of 27 instances of evidence tampering, 42 civil rights violations, and 19 cases of bribery involving officers in this precinct. The color drained from Sullivan's face as Robert continued. "Your arrest yesterday provided the final documentation we needed. Abuse of power, caught on both the store's security cameras and your own body cameras. If you've been enjoying this story so far, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to never miss our weekly stories of unexpected transformations and powerful life lessons." "This precinct has been under federal surveillance for 14 months, Robert explained, removing his worn coat to reveal a small recording device. What started as a routine corruption investigation uncovered something far more extensive. The precinct had transformed into a scene of controlled chaos. FBI agents moved efficiently through the building, securing computers and files, while stunned officers watched in disbelief. Captain Sullivan sat rigid in a chair, his authority evaporated, as agents methodically documented the contents of his office. "I don't understand." Officer Sarah Jenkins approached Robert, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've given you blankets, food. Why didn't you ever say anything?" Robert's weathered face softened. "Because I needed to see who would show kindness, without expectation of reward. Your actions told me everything I needed to know about your character." He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "The Bureau will be reaching out to you next week. We need officers like you to help rebuild this precinct." Across the room, Sullivan's composure finally broke. "This is absurd. You can't seriously believe—" The word of some deranged old man who's been living on the streets. Special Agent Mercer slid a tablet in front of him, playing a video compilation of Sullivan accepting cash from known criminals, planting evidence, and explicitly instructing officers to target specific individuals. Most damning was footage from yesterday, his rough handling of a senior federal agent, and his deliberate dismissal when Robert had attempted to identify himself. 3 years, Robert said quietly, approaching Sullivan. "I've watched you rise through the ranks on fabricated arrests and strategic intimidation. I've documented how you've taught younger officers that certain citizens are disposable, that power matters more than justice." The captain's face contorted with rage. "You were nothing, a pathetic old man digging through trash." "That was rather the point," Robert replied. "The best investigations happen when people underestimate you, when they believe you're beneath their notice. They reveal who they truly are." Maria Gonzalez had been brought in to provide additional testimony. She stood nervously by the door until Robert spotted her. "Ms. Gonzalez," he called warmly, his entire demeanor transforming as he approached her. "Your cafe provided me with more than just coffee. Those conversations you allowed at your corner table documented critical connections in this case." "I always knew there was something different about you," she replied with a small smile. "Your eyes were too sharp for a man who claimed to be confused." As Sullivan was led away for formal processing, Robert retrieved his small notebook from evidence. Inside the back cover was a faded photograph of a young woman in a graduation gown, Dr. Maya Reynolds, the trauma surgeon whose education he had anonymously funded years ago. Agent Mercer appeared at his side. "The director sends his congratulations. This operation will lead to reforms in police departments across 3 states. Robert nodded thoughtfully. It was never about building a case against one captain or even one precinct. It was about understanding how corruption spreads and how to stop it at its source. He glanced at the younger officers watching him with a mixture of awe and uncertainty, and about identifying those worth saving. As the day progressed, the true scope of Robert's work became clear. His seemingly random wanderings had mapped a network of corruption extending far beyond Sullivan. His nonsensical mumblings had documented conversations most thought would never be heard again. The trash he collected had preserved evidence that would now reopen dozens of cases where innocent people had been wrongfully convicted. Throughout it all, Robert maintained the same quiet dignity that had allowed him to move unnoticed among those who saw his age and appearance as reasons to dismiss him. "Will you be retiring now, sir?" a young agent asked as the operation wound down. Robert smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. "I believe I have one more assignment left in me. After all, someone needs to help rebuild what we've taken apart today." As the investigation expanded in the following weeks, Robert Wilson's name became synonymous with integrity throughout federal law enforcement circles. Yet the man himself remained as humble as ever, declining interviews and redirecting praise to the team of agents who supported the operation. On his last day in the precinct, now staffed with newly appointed officers under federal oversight, Robert stood in the briefing room, addressing the incoming class of recruits, still wearing his simple clothes, though now clean and properly fitted. "The badge you'll wear isn't a shield from accountability or a symbol of power," he told them, his voice gentle but unwavering. "It's a daily promise to see people, truly see them, not as categories or stereotypes, but as individuals worthy of your best judgment and fairness." He gestured toward Officer Jenkins, now appointed to a leadership role in the reformed department. "The measure of your character isn't found in how you treat those who can advance your career. It's revealed in how you respond to those you believe can offer you nothing in return." The room fell silent as Robert continued. "I spent 3 years being invisible to most of the officers in this building. I was pushed aside, mocked, and eventually arrested, not because I broke any laws, but because I didn't fit someone's image of a person worthy of dignity or fair treatment." He walked slowly along the line of new officers, making eye contact with each one. "Today I'm asking you to remember that the people you encounter who seem least significant might be carrying the most important stories. The homeless man on the corner, the elderly woman who calls too often, the teenager who doesn't match your idea of a good kid. They all deserve the same justice as anyone else." Outside the precinct, life in the neighborhood continued its steady rhythm. Maria's cafe still served the best coffee on the block. Children still played in the small park where Robert had spent countless hours observing the community. But subtle changes were taking place. Officers now walked their beats rather than driving through. Community members approached them with concerns instead of avoiding eye contact. Small interactions built foundations of trust that had been missing for years. "Will you tell us a story from your FBI days?" one of the new officers asked Robert as he prepared to depart. He smiled, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening. "The most important story isn't about international espionage or dramatic arrests. It's about an officer named Davis who once gave his lunch to a homeless woman when he thought no one was watching. Or Maria Gonzalez, who extended credit to struggling families during hard times without ever mentioning their debt." Robert picked up his worn leather notebook one last time. "The greatest acts of heroism often happen in moments when no one is looking to see who you truly are. Remember that every interaction is a choice between reinforcing someone's invisibility or acknowledging their humanity." As he walked away from the precinct for the final time, Robert Wilson disappeared into the morning crowd, not as an undercover agent, but simply as one more person in a community where every individual now mattered a little more than they had before. The greatest deception is believing we can judge someone's worth by what we see on the surface. Sometimes, the most extraordinary people are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to look past appearances and recognize the truth beneath. If this story touched your heart, there's another one waiting that might just change how you see the world around you. The next journey begins with a single click.